Welcome, everybody. We're so glad to have all of you here. I can see more people filtering in. This is really wonderful. We are really excited to have this first of a series of Farm to School 101 webinars that we're planning. And this is held by the Minnesota Farm to School Leadership Team. And the topics are selected based on what we're hearing from a lot of our stakeholders is rising to the top and what you all are interested in. So we're really excited. We have a couple members of the leadership team here today, and then a couple of expert panelists. We're very excited to share, hear their stories and have them share. And thanks to all of you for joining us. We had a really good response of RSVPs. So we hope that we can share this broad and wide, and we'll have a recording of it in case you want to come back to the information later too. I did want to acknowledge just the heaviness of today. We had a Farm to School leadership team meeting this morning, and just ended with all of us crying, basically. I think it's a very heavy day, the anniversary of George Floyd's murder, and then just the school shooting that happened yesterday. It does feel a little difficult to get on with regular work, but it is exciting to connect with all of you and be talking about something positive that we can do for our kids and for our communities. And it is heartening that we can be together, even in a difficult day. So thank you all for joining us here. And we'll get on to our content here. We'll start with introducing ourselves.
Yeah, I'm Sami Burnington. I come from the Minnesota Department of Education. I know I've met most of you here on today's webinar. I'm looking at the participant list. I work on the school nutrition side of things with Farm to School and the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program.
Yes, and hi everyone, I'm Kate Siebold. It's fun to be here with you this afternoon. I work at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture on local and regional food systems and markets, wholesale markets, and a large part of my work is Farm to School. And I'm a part of the Farm to School leadership team. And I'm new to the agency, but also came from Farm to School before that, where I worked at Minneapolis Public Schools. So excited to see a lot of familiar names and faces here, and also some new ones.
Yes, and I am Erin Mckee. I'm the Community Food Systems Program Director at the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy. And I do a lot of work around Farm to School and Farm to Early Care. And I'm part of the Farm to School leadership team, and I definitely recognize a lot of attendees' names here. It's great to have you with us. If you all will introduce yourselves in the chat, you could share your name and where you're located, and maybe your role in Farm to School. If you're a food service person, or maybe you have a different role, we'd love to see just who is with us today. The next slide, I wanted to share just a little bit of housekeeping too. So I am still getting used to the way that the webinars work versus the way regular Zoom meetings work. I think we've all kind of gotten used to Zoom. One thing that is different about webinars versus just regular Zoom meetings is that we have a Q&A that's in addition to the regular chat where you're all introducing yourselves right now. We also have an option to ask a question of the presenters in a more official way. And you can just click on Q&A and then type in your question, and it will help us keep track of which questions have been asked and which ones have been answered. And that's going to be easier than scanning the chat to make sure that we pick out any questions. And you can use the chat for more, just chatting with each other, letting us know if you have any issues with audio, anything like that, making comments. But if you have official questions, please put them in the chat. And I'm going to be kind of tracking those and trying to make sure that they get to the right presenter, so we can get answers for all of you. And with that, I think we can get started.
Yeah. All right. So you'll see all the logos of our Minnesota Farm to School leadership team members. We have, I think, over 9 member organizations listed here that meet bi-monthly now, but probably more like monthly on different levels and working groups. But we really work through these partnerships across Minnesota to build farm to school initiatives that help kids eat healthy, support farmers, and then hopefully strengthen our Minnesota communities too. The University of Minnesota Extension actually co-convened this team with the Department of Health like over 10 years ago now. So yeah, it's kind of cool that we're still continuing to meet and collaborate and maximize the resources, ideas, and hopefully influence our state's impact on farm to school efforts. So most of you already know these basics, but maybe if there's a few new to farm to school joining today, I just thought I'd go over what really is farm to school. The three core elements are procurement, so purchasing local food, serving it in school meals and maybe taste tests or even in the classroom. Also education, learning about where the food comes from, and then getting students' hands dirty in those school gardens. And this really does look different from school to school and district to district. And farm to school really can happen in any part of the school and community or classroom. And those are what we call the 3 C's of farm to school: the cafeteria, classroom, and community. You'll see those were all pictures from Minnesota of farm to school happening. And it really is a win-win-win. And I should add a fourth win, because it is a win for our students, our Minnesota students, the farmers, and communities, but also school nutrition professionals too. We've seen increased morale among school nutrition professionals too. So with that, I was just going to go through some basics of getting started with farm to school menu planning. And I want to share in the chat, if it works, USDA's farm to school or farm to child nutrition planning guide. And while it's not like a requirement to use this by any means, I think it's a great guide. And you can use it along with this nice 60-page toolkit that they have available. This is just a 6-page document, but they have way more details in their toolkit to walk you through just thinking about your farm to school program, with starting with a vision. Like, where do you want it to go? Like, what is your mission vision of even your school nutrition department? And then thinking through things like defining local and thinking through your goals around those 3 core elements, like procurement, school gardens, and education. And while you might not have goals around all these areas yet, it's a place to start and write it down so that you can start achieving some of these things. And part of that process and guide is building your team. While you might feel like you're on your own right now, you don't have to be. And we've heard over and over that farm to school really is a success when you can build this team. And it really is more sustainable too when you have, this is just a model, but you as the school nutrition professional, but also maybe some school administration involved, classroom teacher, and then someone from the community or community member. While not all teams look exactly like this, it works. And you might strive to find members from each of these areas. And maybe a team already exists that farm to school can just be a part of that group, such as a wellness committee, because all of you know, part of the National School Lunch Program is having that wellness committee. So maybe a working group of that committee is farm to school work. And we actually might be missing students from that model, because important team partners that we've heard over and over, especially from our Harvest of the Month pilot that we have going on this year, is that passionate students makes farm to school all the more of a success. So getting them on board, especially high school students and those that are involved in those ag education classes, FACS classes, even marketing business classes, because they are helpful tools in promoting your farm to school program and even school lunch program too. But also the teachers, FACS teachers, like get them on board because they have so many great ideas. Same with ag educators and those maybe even tech ed teachers, like maybe they'll build you a compost bin or those raised beds that you've always been wanting. And building engineers or custodians, they could be a part of your team too. Get them on board right away. All right. So just getting started, here are all the meal components, which you guys are all experts and you already know about all of these, but just starting to think through, like, how can my menu be evolved to become more local? So thinking about milk right off the bat likely is already local. Just check your invoices and inquire, like, where is my milk coming from? How far away is it? Same with fruit and vegetables. That's a likely common component that you probably are already thinking about, of bringing in local fruits and vegetables, produce. Just a shorter growing season in Minnesota, but meat alternates are a great way to replace with a local item and to stretch it all year long when our growing season is shorter for produce. Same with grains, wild rice, local flour, and other grains. And then also I encourage you to think through all your reimbursable meal options, not only like your main line or your hot lunch line, but like maybe you have a grab and go sandwich meal that you serve, or a salad bar, a fruit and veggie bar, pizza line, pasta line, global line. Like, think of all the options that you serve and start thinking about how you can incorporate or switch out more of the local Minnesota grown foods that we have here. Even breakfast, like turkey sausage or eggs, yogurt parfaits. You'll hear many more examples today, but fresh fruit and vegetable program is another great way to bring in local produce. Your after school snack program, supper meals, also the summer feeding program. When we have our produce most abundant in Minnesota, is a great way to showcase that. And then all the other events there too, others we'll talk about. And then also just remember, what local foods do we have in Minnesota? What is local? Likely anything you're thinking about, we probably can find in Minnesota. Whether or not it's in your region of Minnesota is another, but I think we can strategize and hopefully find what you're looking for right here in our state. So with that, let's talk about strategies, Kate.
Yeah, thanks, Sami. So based on what Sami just shared, we thought we'd just offer some strategies to think about kind of where to get started. And once you're started, what does growth or expansion in farm to school look like? It's, I think a great strategy is to start small, and you don't have to have it all figured out right away, but pick somewhere to start. And then you can, with that plan that Sami offered from the USDA guide, start to think about how to slowly expand it from there. So today's session was called First Bite to Full Tray, Tips and Strategies. And so we really wanted to kind of emphasize, start small with that first bite, which might look different in every district. And then let's think about how to grow to that full tray. So we'll share some examples of that. This is a graphic from the USDA to kind of show the evolution of what a local menu could look like. So you see here all the items with a graphic, they're saying could be a local item on your menu. But remember that when you're getting started, maybe you find out, okay, my milk is local already. Next, I'm going to try strawberries for the first time, and just start there and try it one day on your salad bar. And as you work through those processes of figuring out, from the menu planning perspective and the procurement piece, how it all works, then you can start to slowly introduce more and more items. So for that first bite, some suggestions could be, you could try a taste test. And, maybe it's trying a wild rice salad that you make in November. Maybe it's, just grape tomatoes that you buy a small amount from a farmer for the first time. Try it on your salad bar, see how it goes. Put a sign up, encourage the students to give it a try. Or maybe you want to start with just a one-time special event. So the Great Lakes Apple Crunch in October is a great way to kind of make that first farm to school purchase in a really fun way. So get local apples. We live in a great local apple state. And have all your students and staff crunch into local apples together. Or maybe it's a one-off other special event that you want to try in October for National Farm to School Month. But just pick something where you think that might be a good place for you to start. It feels manageable, and just, you know, start somewhere to give it a try and start to work through some of those processes that you need to figure out. And then once you have that under your belt, then you can kind of start to think about how to grow from there. And I was trying to think about what's halfway between first bite and full tray. So maybe it's a few bites or half a tray, but really just kind of thinking about that middle space where you expand from just kind of those one-off opportunities into something more consistent, without it having to be, you know, your entire meal locally sourced. So I would encourage you to just, you know, sit down with some of your team and look at your menus and think about, you know, what items on our menu can already be locally sourced. Maybe it's you're serving carrots every other week on your salad bar, or roasted carrots, you know, once a month. That might be a great place to say, okay, let's try switching from our, you know, conventional carrots we're buying to something local. Or maybe it's something on your menu that isn't easily, you know, available to source locally, but you could sell it with a product. So for instance, maybe you like to serve jicama on your fresh fruit and vegetable program or on your salad bar. We don't grow a lot of jicama here in Minnesota, but kohlrabi could be a really great replacement. It has a similar crunch, and, you know, can be prepared in a similar way. So that might be a good, you know, substitution that you could make to get something local. You also might just want to look at, you know, some of the recipes you're making. Is there an ingredient that you could start doing local? So maybe you're making salad dressing. Could you do a salad dressing that features local honey? And, you know, again, you could be thinking about your menu from a monthly perspective. Maybe you're looking at something, including something local weekly, per cycle. It really is up to you and how you think your growth trajectory will be most successful. But, you know, getting back to all those different meal components Sami mentioned, think about your entrees, your side dishes, your salad bars, fresh fruit and vegetable program. There's really, you know, there's no one right way to start and then grow your farm to school program. And it's up to you what you think will work best. But these are maybe a few ways to kind of start thinking about what that more local or what that more consistent local offerings on your menu might look like. I also want to mention that a great kind of way to start expanding farm to school could be participating in Minnesota's new Harvest of the Month program, which we are very excited to share with you about. Minnesota Department of Agriculture, Minnesota Department of Education, University of Minnesota Extension. We have been working on a Harvest of the Month pilot to develop this free marketing campaign and educational program for Minnesota that's designed to really build those connections between the cafeteria, classroom, and community that Sami mentioned, the 3 C's of farm to school. And so we've been working with 15 school districts this year to pilot our marketing materials and educational activities. And next year, this summer, we will be launching it statewide. And so this could be a great opportunity for you to try out next year, to kind of, again, start building out that farm to school sourcing. The idea behind Harvest of the Month is that you feature 1 food item per month. And we have, the picture here shows our 12 items, but we're keeping it really flexible. So, you know, you don't have to serve like corn in September, squash in October, dairy in April. It's not set. So we provide the 12 items, and it's up to you to think about, you know, when and where you want to serve those items in your cafeteria. And then it's free marketing materials. So we've got cleans for the salad bars and posters to hang up, stickers for the kids if you do taste tests, or that you know, for you to pass out along the salad bar. And then there's educational resources as well. And so again, it seems like it might be a great opportunity for you to think about how to expand and highlight those farm to school items that you are sourcing. So here are some highlights from our pilot year so far. Felicia, who you'll be hearing from later, can share perhaps in her mention of how it's been at Becker, but that's one of our pilot schools. And it's been a really fun year. We've learned a lot, and everything that we've gone through from this pilot will help us with this launch next year statewide, and we really hope that you come along for it. So there will be more information coming from us soon about how to sign up for Harvest of the Month, but this QR code and this bit.ly link here is how you can sign up for our interest form. So this is just a form, you're not making any commitment yet, but it's a way to just stay up to date when we do have the launch of the sign up for Harvest of the Month, and you'll get updates from us. So if you think that's something you might be interested in, scan that code. We can also put the link in the chat, and you can fill out that form just to stay in the loop about Harvest of the Month. So then you've taken the first bite, you've moved on to a few bites or half a tray, you're kind of consistently doing some farm to school purchasing, then it might be a fun time to try moving to the full tray. And Minnesota Thursdays is a great way to do that. So Minnesota Thursdays was started by Minneapolis Public Schools in 2013, but now there's several districts around the state that do it. You'll be hearing from some after this. And it's a great way to highlight farm to school. So it's, the idea is to just have a monthly meal where everything on the tray, your meal is local and it's seasonal, and it's a great way to get kids excited about what local and seasonal eating looks like. So, you can think about, again, the vegetables and the fruits, your dairy, maybe it's poultry, or beef, or maybe you have those local grains and beans. So really thinking about, all those meal components, what could a full local meal look like? So these are just some examples from some districts. So here Minneapolis did a Minnesota Thursday featuring a Ferndale turkey hot dog, potato salad with local potatoes, some purple daikon radishes, mixed greens, and a local chocolate chip cookie. I will say having a local dessert is maybe a fun way to get kids extra excited, and a fun way to occasionally feature another local item that maybe is less common on the menu. And then here's another example from Dover Iota. So also doing a local hot dog or hamburger, local sweet corn, tomatoes, onions. There's so much potential around Minnesota Thursday when you think about all the things that are potentially going across a lunch tray in a given day, week, school year. And so just to start to think about what could that full local offering look like. Here's another example from Roseville, who you'll also be hearing from later. So here a Ferndale turkey meatball, roasted broccoli, milk, a Honeycrisp Minnesota apple, a mixed meat frozen yogurt. Another example, a chicken drumstick, a local dinner roll, a variety of fresh veggies off the salad bar, watermelon, a grain blend featuring some grains from In Harvest out of Bemidji, Minnesota, of Johnny Pup, another fantastically delicious dessert item that's local. And so, again, those are just a few ways that Minnesota Thursday could look like, but really there's so many different menu options that you could think about. And it could be, we talk about the first bite, maybe it's Great Lakes Apple Crunch, you move to something more consistent, and then you reach for Minnesota Thursday. But you also could do a different process too. Maybe you start with Great Lakes, and then you want to try that one Minnesota Thursday for the first time, and then move into something consistent. That's okay too. It's really about figuring out what makes the most sense for you and your team and your students and the producers you work with. But those are just a few ideas of how to kind of think about that evolution of what local menu planning can look like. So I'm going to stop talking now and hand it off to one of our wonderful guest speakers today, Felicia Kidduck, who's the food service director for Becker. And Felicia, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks for the introduction. Yes, my name is Felicia Kidduck, food service director here in Becker. We're located just west of the metro. We have 4 schools, so 2 elementary schools, 1 middle and 1 high school, with about just under 3,000 students. So I'm happy to be here today and show you guys a little bit about what we are doing in this small to medium-sized school district. I've been working to grow the farm to school program over the last 3 years since I've been here. And as Kate touched on, the Harvest of the Month program, we are one of the pilot schools that got to kind of test this program out. And I signed up for it as a way to challenge myself or encourage me to try new things and get new items on the menu. And I'm really glad I did. Prior to this pilot program, you know, we had never had Minnesota raised poultry on before. So that was something new. And I'll show you in one of the future slides, you know, what we did that day. So it was just a really good challenge for myself to put myself out there and do that. So I would encourage you all to participate when it's totally rolled out as well. So it's been a great experience. And I also liked what Kate said too about the whole, where are you at? The first bite to the full tray. I definitely started with just the first bite, you know, just having apples on in the fall. And within the last couple of years, you know, we've added so many more local foods and found ways to fit them into the cycle menu versus just on one time. So I'm hoping this coming year, we might be more in that half tray or a few bites category, and we'll keep growing from there. So that's kind of where we're at. But this first slide here shows the fall foods that we did, which were also a part of the Harvest of the Month program as well. So again, we just did whole apples for the Great Lakes Crunch Day, which was great. I love to see, you can see the joy on the kids' faces, how excited they are to have these apples and to have them highlighted and to get a fun sticker. So that was a great day. And you know, we put the whole apples on maybe on a week that we have a lot going on in the kitchen and maybe we don't have time to process and prep and, you know, take the extra staff time. So whole apples it is. Where looking at maybe a different week that has a little bit easier entrees, that's where we throw in the acorn squash, for example. And take it, I mean, I encourage you to just take it slow. You know, one day you're going to wash the squash. The next day you might slice and season it. And the third day you are cooking it, or whatever works for your kitchen. You have to do what works for you. There's definitely not a right or wrong way to do it. And the more times you do it, you learn from it, you work out those kinks, and, you know, customize those recipes to get something that the students are happy with. So yeah, so apples and squash here. We left the squash skin on the acorn squash, which I liked to be able to show the students, you know, kind of what that looked like. Yeah, I think next slide. And some more fall foods that we had in the top right, you can see that dinner roll. So that was from a local bakery out of St. Cloud. Another easy way to get a Minnesota product on your menu. That bakery in St. Cloud uses wheat grown in Minnesota. So that was great. And then slicing just, bell peppers, cherry tomatoes. Kate mentioned just throw them on the salad bar. If that's where you're starting and that's what works, great. Kids love popping cherry tomatoes. And then where you can add in those more time consuming components, you know, we did watermelon. We tried oven roasted potatoes for the first time this year, which went over really well. So we were excited to do that. And for myself as a director, I want to get that staff buy-in and have them as excited as well. So I'm always offering my help, or, you know, what can I do to jump in the kitchen? Can I wash the squash? Can I slice potatoes? Just to show them that I'm as committed and thankful for their hard work as well. So next slide. So the spring foods we did, so I was out on maternity leave all of spring. So I did my best to set my crew up for success while I was out. And based on these pictures, I think that it went really well for them. So I had planned menus out. You can see in the top left, at the middle school and high school, we tried something for the first time. We did turkey lettuce wraps using Minnesota raised turkey and then Minnesota grown lettuce, bib lettuce as well. So feedback from the middle school and high schoolers was that it was really good. The bib lettuce got a little bit soggy, was a little bit of feedback the longer that it sat in there. So just something to consider going into the next year, but I think it looked really nice. They said it had great flavor. So I think the turkey recipe was a keeper. And then on the right-handed side, you can see a cheese slice. We used local creamery to get garlic and, cheddar and mozzarella cheese slices. We use those on our grilled cheese sandwich as well as on our burger bar day. So something as easy as swapping out a cheese slice from, you know, your regular distributor, which might be from Minnesota anyways, but just from a local creamery is a fun change up. So that was good. And then in the bottom left, we have a like a strawberry balsamic green salad with greens that were grown in Minnesota. And that we've been doing one specialty salad here in May since it is National Salad Month. So we've been highlighting farm to school that route. I think, oh, and the other thing I wanted to touch on too is check with your prime distributor to see if they potentially have Minnesota grown products that are already stocked. Like I had called the greens grower and he's like, yeah, of course you can purchase from us, but we're already stocked at your prime distributor. So here's the item number. So sometimes going down that rabbit hole, brings you right where you need to be. So that was, yeah, great. And how easy to get that on your weekly truck. So next slide. We partnered or worked together with our students this year and our farm to school program. So we went into the FACS class this year at the high school and had each kitchen within the FACS class create a pilaf recipe using Minnesota wild rice. So we had, 8 groups that each cooked a pilaf recipe, and then staff, students, and kitchen staff voted on their favorite, and we menued that in K-12 for the lunch menu. So that was really fun to kind of get them involved and show them what they're doing. And they actually, the winning group came into the kitchen and got to get a tour of the kitchen, and we explained, this is how we're going to prep exactly what you gave us and all that. So next slide. And then something fun we did this past August was a farm tour at one of our local farms that we bought a bunch of produce from for our farm to school program. I had reached out to them and asked, hey, could we come out and see where these products are going to be growing so that my staff can, gain that excitement and we can get that buy-in from them. And it was a really fun experience. So I would encourage, all of you to reach out to local farms as well. Staff were so excited. The farmers were excited to show us. They let us pick some produce to take home. And I think it just, got my staff excited to see, hey, we saw this in the ground and now I'm placing it on your lunch tray, that, that full circle thing, which was really cool. So next slide. So I am by no means an expert in this farm to school. I feel like I'm just kind of getting the ball rolling myself, but really just take the time to research. I know none of us have all the extra spare time, but find the time to go down that rabbit hole of starting somewhere and just seeing where it takes you. I've called a lot of farmers and they're like, well, I can't help you, but try reaching out to so-and-so because they probably have what you need or can accommodate you. Go to the farmer's market, see if you can make connections there, and just, use the resources that, the 3 hosts are putting out there as well, because they're super helpful. And then garner staff buy-in, like just see what would make them excited to put on the menu. They're the ones that are putting in the work to process these items for our students. So having their excitement and willingness, I think, is a really big thing too. And explain why you're putting on these local things on your menu too. So, and then as was touched on, look at your cycle menu and find where local foods could fit. Is it a one-time thing in the fall month, or is it something that you can build into your cycle menu? Could you do the dinner rolls once a month throughout the year, or, the poultry or the beef or something like that? So just look at the big picture. And then I like to highlight, the fun days as well. I don't think I mentioned the lettuce wraps day. We did that on, what do you call it in April? Earth Day, excuse me. So that was a fun spot to put that. And then start small and build on each year's successes. We're going to have some failures and we're aware of that. And we're also going to have really big successes. So that's just focus on the good and grow from there. And don't forget to promote what you're doing. Posters and signage in the cafeteria. Make sure that if you have a district Facebook page or a nutrition services Facebook page, make sure you're getting those posts out there just to show the families and community all of the good that you're doing in school nutrition, because I know when I post things out there, we get such great feedback from parents and community members as well. So next slide. And that's all that I had for the moment. So I don't know if we're doing questions now or at the end.
Oh my gosh, Felicia, thank you so much. I'm so impressed, especially since this has been such a difficult couple of years that you've been growing your program and doing more and more activities, especially during these challenging couple of years. If anyone does have questions, you can feel free to put them in the Q&A. Otherwise, thank you so much, Felicia, and we will have Q&A time at the end too, so you can kind of hold your questions to the end if you'd like to do that as well. But now I'd like to turn it over to Angie from Roseville to hear about what they have been doing.
Hi, I'm Angie with Roseville Area Schools and St. Anthony New Brighton Schools. We've got about 16 locations that also includes a couple of joint agreement schools. So we're serving just under 10,000 students on a given day. And we have been doing farm to school since I took over Roseville in 6 years ago. But I did have a little bit of a head start back in 2013 when I worked with St. Paul Public Schools, and we partnered with Minneapolis Public Schools to develop the Minnesota Thursday concept. So I had a couple of tricks up my sleeve starting out in a new district. Next slide. So we create all of our menus, as probably many of you do, in January. So January, February timeline is when most of our farmers are buying their seeds. So that's a really good time to start thinking about planting those items. As was already said, think through all of the different child nutrition programs that you operate to see where there might be opportunities to slip in something local. We do try to put them in all of our programs, and it really just kind of depends on the year, the crops, the weather. But we try to get as much in as possible and spread it throughout, because different students, you've got kind of a different market with each student. Different students participate in different programs. So you want to make sure that all of your students have the opportunity to see those items. Interns are great. If you have interns, if you take interns, are a great resource for testing out those recipes as you're trying to create concepts in the middle of winter. And we have also been very fortunate enough to tap some local chefs for recipes. So using SHIP funds, we were able to pay for some chef recipe development if your county participates in SHIP, if those funds are available to nutrition services. If they're not currently available to nutrition services, but another department is using them, maybe tap into your wellness department to see if you can siphon off any of those funds. It was already mentioned that salad bars and serving items raw can be a nicer, maybe more minimal prep way to do things. We've been able to source food through a prime vendor. They have a really great tool on their website that you can sort for local items. We've done direct sales directly through farmers and growers. And then we are the first ring suburbs of Minneapolis and St. Paul. So for those of you who are in the Twin Cities metro, and I am not quite sure how far out they're shipping at this point, but the Goodacre Food Hub is also a great resource. Their primary focus is produce at this point, but they have also expanded their inventory to include eggs, tofu, kimchi, a couple other products. I think even some Ferndale products are now available. And so that might be another avenue that you could source depending on the size of your district. Getting staff buy-in is huge. And I can only recommend that you start slowly and not overwhelmed, because we're coming off of a very hard 2 years. I don't know if anyone else is having staffing issues, but we are still seeing major staffing shortages. It's going to take time to get buy-in from your staff, but if they're part of the process the entire way, it's really important for them to pull their staff along. So we use the train the trainer concept. We were fortunate to be part of a grant with the Goodacre and got some funding through the USDA to do some trainings. So we trained our managers on the skills to prepare different local produce items. And we played with recipes, got their input on recipes. And that was really fun to really see the inner chef come out of all of our kitchen managers and tweak their own recipes. So before they made it to the menu, all of our managers would have seen the recipes, and then they would then be responsible for training their staff. We're currently doing a monthly Zoom call, since we're all really adept at Zoom at this point. Before each of the Minnesota Thursdays, we just have a quick half-hour meeting to talk through where items are going to come from, where they need to be ordered from, when they'll arrive at their doorstep if we're doing sort of centralized ordering, and then reviewing the recipe, just walking through it and talking through different aspects that might be different in different kitchens, because different kitchens have different equipment, which brings me to my next point. I'm very fortunate to have all cooking kitchens, but some kitchens are in better shape than others. So really utilizing grants, there's always a farm to school grant, there's the kitchen equipment grants, checking with MDE to make sure that you see what's available if your kitchen is in need of additional equipment, because if you do plan to go beyond raw vegetables and fruits, you will need some sort of equipment to prepare those local items. And then marketing is just really clutch. We were joking that most of our social media pages are just full of my lunches. So sort of staging trays and taking a picture is a really easy way to tell your story. If you don't tell your story, someone else is going to tell it. And if it's the news or an angry parent, it's not going to be a good story. So really important to just put out there what's available. It's kind of head off some calls too. My kid only got one chicken drumstick and a chocolate milk for lunch. And I said, I was at that school today for lunch and I can tell you what was available, or I could show you a picture of what I ate on the same lunch line. And boy, that phone call ended real quick once they actually hopped on our Facebook page and saw what was available for lunch that day. So, telling your story through multiple means, but also, I don't know about you guys, I'm not a marketing person. I'm a dietitian by trade. So if you have a communications department, or again, using interns, not that age technically goes along with social media savviness, but it oftentimes does. But utilizing other resources that can maybe help you create those marketing tools. And I'll show you a couple of our posters later. Let's see. Another thing to go back to the staffing piece, since labor is hard, in looking at, we plan a monthly cycle, or we currently have a 4-week cycle. And I know everyone's cycles are different, but our Minnesota Thursdays fall on a Thursday. So we plan for the week leading up to it to have very easy or easier menu days, so that there is time. For example, Felicia was talking about washing the squash one day, cutting it the next day, roasting it on the day it's served, to sort of spread production along the lines, because if you have pizza day, you might have some downtime. So to really, create that menu with staff in mind, and not just the day that you're going to feature something local. It might be the day or 2 or 3 preceding that day. Next slide. So I'm just going to talk about some of the things that we currently serve or have served. We've got a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables, and a lot of those have been through breakfast, lunch, and then the fresh fruit and vegetable program have been key ways to do that. Obviously, some serve raw better than others, but roasting seems to be the simplest, easiest, foolproof way to bring out the best taste and quality of our local vegetables. Next slide. Here was my workaround for labor shortages this fall. We bought, or we promised a farmer that we're going to buy their corn for a September menu day. This is, mind you, the first week back to school. And I want to say just about every kitchen had at least one staff member out. So we were very short staffed. And I made the promise to my staff that they would not shuck a single piece of corn, that the corn would come to them shucked and clean. All they would have to do is half it and steam it. So what did I do? I reached out to PTAs, I reached out to the National Honor Society, and we had students and parents shucking corn. It was a blast. I thought it was going to be a nightmare, but it was an absolute blast. We shucked, I forget how many pounds of corn. We did turn people away because we didn't have enough room for our volunteers. The kids were so excited. It built up such a hype to say, I'm going to have this for lunch on Thursday. And also another just free marketing tool, because parents who were coming for pickup who weren't part of the PTA were asking, what are you guys doing? So kind of killed 3 birds with 1 stone. We were short on labor, we got kids excited about it, and it was a free marketing tool. Next slide. So here is that next day's menu. We were able to get everybody a half a corn on the cob, and my staff was happy because they didn't have to shuck any corn. Next slide. Continuing on with what we serve, we do a couple grains, and that came in the form of homemade whole grain biscuits, but then also some wild rice, some purchased pre-made baguettes, tortillas, tostadas, and buns. So sometimes those local items can be purchased items, or sometimes they can be more than just ingredients that go into a dish that you have to create. Our proteins, I believe Ferndale just dropped their turkey burger. Oh, but I did take that off of the slide. But we are starting to expand our proteins. We're defining local as about a 300-mile radius. But that's also a kind of a loose definition, because we're also supporting makers of things. So something new that we launched this year was the Hoyo Sambusa. Hoyo Sambusa, I think I'm saying that wrong. And that is, every culture has their meat pie, but this is a Somali meat pie that's made by Somali women in Minneapolis. And that was such a big hit. It's actually going to go on our menu cycle for next year because it was delicious. It was well received, and they are available in some grocery stores. And it was such an amazing thing to experience. I heard all these stories of what it looked like being served in their schools. We had a school near the fairgrounds that's in a predominantly white neighborhood, but we've got a handful of Somali students in that school. And it was overheard that one of the Somali students was telling his white classmate next to him who was asking, what's a sambusa? He said, it's kind of like a Somali hot pocket. And that will forever stick with me as the best definition of what a sambusa is, or for that particular sambusa. So it's a great way to integrate and teach kids about other cultures through the food too. So miscellaneous, obviously we're in the Midwest. A lot of our milk and cheese comes from Minnesota and Wisconsin farms. And then we do the mixed yogurts, the Johnny Pops, we've gotten honey and maple syrup, and just recently a local spice maker. We've been integrating her blends so that we're not buying 6 different spices. So every school has a 16-ounce cumin when they only need a couple tablespoons. So that's something that we're exploring too, to make sure that we're keeping costs down. Next slide. This is just a brain vomit of the recipes used within the last couple of years that have integrated some local products. I think some of these are already probably on the Minnesota website, the MDE website, which I'm sure Sami can share the link to the Google Drive, but I'm more than happy to share any of these recipes as well. Next slide. We've got a couple of things coming up. We were, as part of that SHIP grant that I talked about, we were able to work with Chef Yi Vang to create a coconut curry recipe. A true chef apparently never measures anything and just does everything to taste. So that recipe is still in development, but it's going to be phenomenal. And we're really excited because he's now a James Beard nominee. We're looking at integrating local items into our breakfast options to have a Minnesota Thursday breakfast. And then adding more plant forward and tofu dishes. So we've got Minnesota tofu, which I think the Good Acre is now distributing as well. And then deeply rooted pea proteins. And that's been something that we've been working towards. We're really fortunate to have some awesome local vendors in that arena. And then lastly, more farm to summer. We do a pretty short but large summer program. And obviously it's Minnesota, that's the prime growing season. So trying to integrate stuff there as well. Next slide. So as Kate talked about, the Minnesota Thursday is where we started. Actually, we started with the Great Apple Crunch, and then we started with one Minnesota Thursday a month. And we borrowed the marketing materials from Minneapolis's wonderful graphic designer. So don't reinvent the wheel. They're more than willing to share. We got some t-shirts with a grant, so that was really good marketing, so that kids realized that something was different when our staff were wearing their Minnesota Thursday shirts. And using that consistent style on your marketing materials is really helpful to tell your story. Next slide. So I'm just going to show a couple examples of some of our Minnesota Thursday trays. We'll go through these rather quickly. This is a Ferndale Market turkey burger with a Baumgart's cheddar cheese. We've got our Johnny Pop there, and then roasted yellow squash and zucchini. Next slide. This is a smart chicken drumstick with just a rotisserie seasoning blend, a pan of gold dinner roll, a local apple, and a roasted broccoli. Next slide. This was a diced turkey thigh from Ferndale that we made into turkey and gravy. There's not much delicata squash on this tray because I was eating it in line. It was so good, but we did a maple roasted delicata squash and then a pan of gold dinner roll. Next slide. Turkey wild rice soup with roasted sweet potatoes. Next slide. This is a Thousand Hills beef hot dog, and then we did a coleslaw made with local cabbage. Next slide. As we get into the cold months, it's really hard to get non-root vegetables, but that's okay because kids like a lot of starchy vegetables. This is a turkey chili with baked potato, a baked potato bar. So we made our own turkey chili with Ferndale chili. We didn't use local beans, but we're going to work on that recipe next. And then we just put it over a baked potato. Next slide. This is a baked French toast with a fennel orange roasted carrots. Next slide. Turkey thigh with a local bakery's cornbread, and then there's coleslaw again. Next slide. Turkey sloppy joe or sloppy toms, as I now know. Next slide. Mega meatball with Thousand Hills beef, Johnny Pop, roasted broccoli. Next slide. Chicken yassa with a jollof rice and roasted sweet potatoes. Next slide. Beef stroganoff with local beef, local mushrooms, and there's that mix me cup. Next slide. Wild rice pilaf. This was another Thanksgiving menu day. Next slide. And there's that sambusa with our baris iskukaris or Somali style rice with a spice blend and roasted broccoli. Next slide. So just the next couple of slides, Kate, you can just kind of click through them, are just ways to kind of tell the story. We've got a Meet Your Farmer poster. If you go to the next slide, and that was actually created by the Good Acre. They've got a bit of an inventory of a couple of the farms that they're using. So it tells what they grow, a little bit about the farmer, and then it shows where in the state it's made. Next slide. We had an intern create some Harvest of the Month posters. So to talk a little bit about the nutrition, to sneak in that nutrition education there, a did you know fun fact, and then again, where the farmer that we're sourcing it from is. Next slide. Here's a poster that kind of captures in a nutshell what that menu day is featuring. Next slide. And then just working through the challenges. So I kind of talked about the staffing and labor, and that can be balanced out by purchasing sort of ready to eat or easier labor items like the hot dog or the burger. USDA regulations, we're constantly working to make sure that the recipes are meeting the requirements. Obviously, we've got a little bit of leeway with the whole grains now. So, and asking Chef Yevang about, could we use a whole grain jasmine rice? He looked at me like I had grown a second head. If we are going to have a traditional Hmong curry, we are serving white jasmine rice with it. And there is no wiggle room there. And that's okay because we have the wiggle room to make that a culturally appropriate and accurate meal. Equipment and training. There's always grants that you can look for that. And you can also work with the existing equipment that you have. Time to eat, work with your wellness committee if you're concerned that eating, whole muscle chicken on the bone takes a little bit longer. It might. Food waste, something that we like to do, especially because some of these menu items kids are seeing for the first time. We always have 2 options for lunch. We'll offer a taste with the B lunch. So the B lunch might be a soy butter and grape jelly sandwich, but maybe if they just want to try the rice this time, then they'll be more likely to take it next time. rather than trying to take a full portion of the meal that they might not like and then worry about being hungry. We know how important school lunch is to our kiddos. Meeting simultaneous cultural demands. So reintroducing pork. Minnesota is the #2 pork producer in the entire country. They never had pork on the menu until I got to this district. So working through that delicately with our cultural liaisons is really important. Since we're losing 70 cents per meal, starting July 1, thinking through costs and reimbursement rates and how much you can actually spend on a meal, and maybe not focusing on one meal per se, but again, just like production, balancing the meal costs throughout that week. Food allergies and intolerances. One good thing about scratch cooking is that you can control every single ingredient that you put in. So you can really make sure that if you want to avoid a specific allergen that's high in your district, or you want to just control some of those items, that's one way to do it through your recipe. Marketing can help guide the narrative of your district. So really breaking down that public perception of school meals. And then supply chain issues. Farm to school can help with that. We've had a lot in the past 2 years, but I've always been able to get turkey from Ferndale Market. So that is one way. If your chicken's coming from across the country, you might not know if it's going to be there in the quantity or by the time that you need it. But if it's coming from a local vendor, they'll guarantee it. And usually you have a really good connection with them because they are local. So they'll put you on the top of their priority list. I think that's it. Yes. So we will save questions for the end, I think.
Wow, super awesome, both Felicia and Angie. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So just quickly, with only a couple minutes left, what are some next steps you all can be taking in the time being? You can think about your farm to school team and others that might join you in these efforts. Also, maybe pull out that Agree Farm to School grant if you are a grantee on today's call, and revisit your original grant application and work plan and start taking steps to make that work plan come to life. Again, review those menus, kind of like what we talked about, and use some of the strategies, examples that you heard today to start building your menus and taking that one step to bring in more local foods. You can attend or plan to attend our next procurement webinar. This is a series of webinars. So today was the first. We have another one coming up soon. So look for an email about when that date will be, and then start connecting with farmers and food producers.
And then we did want to highlight that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to be alone in this effort. I think it's very clear that we have a great community around farm to school in Minnesota. If you want to join us, I know a lot of you, I recognize your names from joining some of our other opportunities. We have monthly office hours where members of the leadership team are there to answer your questions. You can come and say, hey, I'm having this problem, and we can try to get you an answer. And if we can't answer it right then, we'll find an answer for you. So that link that I just pasted in the chat is a way to register. And then that happens every month. So you register one time and then you get the link to keep joining every month. And then every other month, we have farm to school informal check-in. So this is less like troubleshooting and more just kind of connecting and talking about topics, brainstorming, connecting with your peers. It's a similar thing. You just register once and you can keep coming to the future ones too. And those are great ways to be part of the community. We have a lot of resources we were going to highlight, and I think it's best if we actually include those in a follow-up email, because it's a lot for you to all try to write down. We did want to quickly do a poll just to see what you would prefer as far as our next procurement webinar, thinking about the end of the school year for so many of you. If you want to give us feedback on the timing of that, you can answer right on the poll on your screen and just give us that feedback. But I think that's the last thing that we had on our official content agenda. I did see there was a question about the Minnesota grown promo items. I put a link to the registration or the order page in the Q&A thing there. We can also include that in our follow-up email. Our time is up for our webinar. If you have any questions, I am willing to stay on for a minute here, but if you have to jump on, I know a lot of us are going from back-to-back meetings these days, so I totally understand and you won't miss anything beyond just questions, but I am willing to stay on for another couple minutes. But otherwise, for those of you who have to leave, you can go right ahead. And we really appreciate all of you joining us today. This was so great. I just especially want to thank Felicia and Angie for the amazing content. That was just so great and inspiring, and I loved it. Anything else from our co-hosts today or co-presenters?
Oh, just thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm seeing in the poll, it looks like there's a lot of votes for late June. So watch for an email. We'll let you know when we're going to get that next webinar going. We'll have more experts to share their perspectives. But thank you all and have a great rest of your day.